Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Okay, so on the 11th of April, I attended the TCA meeting. I gotta tell you, that was a major eye-opener. I think that was my first TCA meeting. It was a joint meeting of the Foothill Eastern and the San Joaquin. So the first thing is that the CEO had sent out a letter opposing AB 1273, which was a bill in opposition to TCA. A week before the agenda appeared on the board's agenda item. So the board on 4/11 was supposed to discuss and decide what position the board was going to take. And, it came out that the CEO had already sent out on TCA letterhead under his name as CEO opposition. Then the next item was there was supposed to be an independent audit, and the subcommittee of the TCA was supposed to have gone through various auditor firms making a recommendation to the entire board of the TCA, and it turned out, like the previous item, the subcommittee had already selected an auditor behind closed doors, so their ad hoc subcommittees are not open to the public, which I have to totally disagree with. What they're talking about should be public information. But it was behind closed doors. They had picked the auditor and hired the auditor, and that item was on the board agenda for the 11th. So 2 items that the board is supposed to approve, TCA already made these decisions without any board approval whatsoever, which, to me says, who's running TCA? Apparently not the board. On the public record, and this is all on the video, anybody can watch this. Okay, one TCA board member, because there were a lot of people that showed up. As you can imagine, for San Clemente, this is a huge issue. There's the proposed road is going through their homes, their green space. One TCA board member was irate that people had showed up. She even mentioned that, some of these people showed up in a bus, like this was a problem for her. Attendees were members of the public. They have every right to be there. This is a public agency, and they have every right to come and to express their comments. This is their money. This is their homes. We want to encourage people, not discourage them. So I found that highly inappropriate. Another board member, okay, so 2 San Clemente, because this was a joint meeting, so there was 1 San Clemente member from Foothill Eastern and 1 from San Joaquin. They had item 9 on the agenda, and that was to not just get an independent audit, but to get an outside independent investigation, along with some other things, suspension of contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And, maybe the other board members disagreed. That's what an agenda item is there to talk about. One of the board members was actually yelling at these 2 San Clemente people who had this audacity to put this item on the agenda for an independent outside audit. He made it very clear, and as I said, go and listen, that he had supported these 2 San Clemente directors in the election, and he supported them because they had promised that they were going to make San Clemente no longer this hostile city. And he was not the least bit pleased that my takeaway is that they had broken their promise. It was kind of like, your parents, hey, I brought you into this world, I can take you back out. I felt that was highly inappropriate. I did learn some really good things, though. Watching the public speakers, well, the TCA, like San Clemente, they allow people to put slides and stuff on the screen when they spoke. Well, I thought this was great. One of the speakers was talking about the slide over the years from work where the TCA had widened a road. It was very powerful because you could actually see the change in the landscape, which you just couldn't get if someone was just talking. So I think that's something that we should consider doing here, is allowing people to put something on the screen. I know San Clemente does it. I know other cities do it, with the understanding that people have to give it to us, 24, 48 hours in advance so we can look and see what's going up there. But, it was very, very powerful, and I didn't see anybody doing anything inappropriate. I also heard, this was another interesting thing, I heard the audience, which was, as I said, standing room only, expressing themselves quite loudly at multiple times during the meeting. And to Chairman Miniger's credit, he did not stop people. They booed, they catcalled, they, laughed, they said things. But it passed quickly, a couple of seconds, people were able to express themselves, and it allowed them to vent that. It didn't disrupt the meeting, it stopped for a minute, people went boo, and then it continued on. So I thought that was really good. I think that sometimes we at these meetings don't allow people to express a natural expression of something that is very emotional, touches them personally. And I think that it is wrong for us to try to silence people, even to the point where we're not letting people whisper to each other. I find that to be inappropriate, and I would commend Mr. Minigar for the way he handled that. He did not gavel people. And if it gets to a point where it actually does disrupt, somebody stands up, disrupts the meeting, that would be a different thing. You'd have that person leave. But just general expressions of the public, I found that to be very refreshing. Lastly, there were about 25 directors sitting around this big horseshoe and some staff, and they all spoke to each other. Sometimes it got a little heated, but I found that was also something that moved the meeting along, because when two of the directors were having a discussion, they were able to have that discussion, finish their point, and it moved the meeting forward. So I found that to be very refreshing. These are directors making really important decisions. I mean, there's $11.6 billion in debt that the TCA has. As I said, they're building roads. And I found that to be very refreshing. One thing I did find that I found troubling is several of other electeds have told me that TCA board members, and maybe other boards, I don't know, are paid for their meetings and being on committees, which I find to be something that the public should know, and they may not know. And so that's something that maybe we should look at here in Dana Point, for transparency and public disclosure. Who gets paid for meetings? We have to, every 2 weeks, we have to say where we are, what meetings we've attended. I think that's information that the public should be entitled to, because, as I said, they're making decisions, and if they have a bias or a reason to decide one way or the other in the interest of transparency, that's something we know. So that's something I may be bringing back. Thank you.